Well, good evening, everybody. It is another beautiful Kentucky day here in Hardin County, Kentucky, and in the whole region. We've had some great thunderstorms come through, give us some rain, which we need for our crops. But this is the Hillbilly Think Tank coming at you live with me, Spencer Keck, and I am the educated hillbilly. No, that's not an oxymoron. Don't call me a moron. There have been educated, erudite, emancipated hillbillies in Kentucky ever since my kin came through the Cumberland Gap with Daniel Boone many moons ago. Now, y'all, wow. I have come from a long line of folks who have served proudly this nation of ours in uniform. I retired from the Department of Defense, from the Navy in 2014 after joining at age 18 in 1990. And I thought I had seen some boondoggle administrations. I wasn't very happy with Rumsfeld as SecDef, but boy, oh boy, don't this just beat all what we got now. If you didn't get a chance to spend 5 hours watching Congress go over the $1.5 trillion request from the Pentagon for next year's Pentagon budget, and then if you didn't get to see Whiskey Pete Kegsbreath, that's old Captain Pete, and General Cain fall under the pressure, well, I'm here to break it all down for you. Because, y'all, this is a boondoggle asking our nation to give $1.5 trillion more into debt because none of us want to see our taxes raised for this. So we're going to be loaning from who? China again to pay off this requisition of military might? Yep. We already know that this war in Iran is costing us far more than most of us ever would be willing to pay. We never should be willing to pay the amount that they want. So far, the Iran war has cost $25 billion, the Pentagon officials say. Other sources outside the Pentagon are putting it at $50 billion. Of course, that's not including our foray into Venezuela and other countries, our planned foray into Cuba. So when is our willingness to be boondoggled going to end? Now, Hardin County, we know we could use $1.5 trillion way better than Whiskey Pete Kegsbreath would. Now, I agree. We've got to have a strong military, strong Department of Defense, and that also will come back to Hardin County vis-a-vis Fort Knox, but this price that we're really being asked to pay for a war that none of us fully understand, that none of us have had explained to us, it's just boggling my mind. Now, I waded through quite a bit of this, Capitol Hill fiasco today. There were some amazing, brave folks that stood up, spoke the truth about what's going on, about what we need, what we don't need. And I'm going to try to, in a short amount of time, go over that with you, you know. But let's just all agree we didn't ask for these extended wars in the Middle East. I know a lot of folks held their nose and voted for Captain Bone Spurs because he promised no more endless wars in the Middle East. That was the biggest promise that a lot of folks I knew who never would have thought of voting for him. That's why they voted for him. So I am not going to belittle them for not wanting more endless wars. I, you know, I can't say enough about how I don't want to be seeing this nation heading down that path anymore. But we've got to rein in this craziness. How do we do it? Talked about it last night. We got to start making your 5 calls a day to Congress. But we've also got to recognize it's up to us because Congress is talking, but they're not actually putting their money where their mouth should be. So let's look at a little bit of what happened today.
I would say the blockade that we hold that doesn't allow anything to come in or out of Iranian ports.
Okay, so
always
we've blockaded their blockade. So they blockaded us, and then we blockaded their blockade. That's like saying, "Tag, you're it." Or if President Madison had said, "Well, the British just burned down Washington, but don't worry, we're going to burn it down as well."
Are you really buying what this guy has to say? Listen again.
So do you call Iran closing the Strait of Hormuz winning?
Well, I would say the blockade that we hold that doesn't allow anything to come in or out of Iranian ports.
Okay, so we've blockaded their blockade. So they blockaded us, and then we blockaded their blockade. That's like saying, "Tag, you're it." Or if President Madison had said, "Well, the British just burned down Washington, but don't worry, we're going to burn it down as well."
Are you really buying what this guy has to say? Listen again.
So do you call Iran closing the Strait of Hormuz winning?
Well, I would say the blockade that we hold that doesn't allow anything to come in or out of Iranian ports.
Okay, so we've blockaded their blockade. So they blockaded us, and then we blockaded their blockade.
So, yeah, I had to repeat it just a couple times to make sure we could actually get what it is that Captain Whiskey Pete is trying to sell us. We've lost 13 lives now in this conflict. We've had hundreds of injuries that they're not willing to really share us the correct number of. And yet they want $1.5 trillion more to do more of this next year. They're going to use every single cent they were allocated this year for this war, and they want more money this year before we give them $1.5 trillion next year. Let's don't forget that. They want more money to spend on this war and to pay for what we already did in Venezuela as well. So, there are some sane minds out there that are pushing back. We've all got to stand up with them, get to work with them to stop this, because this cannot abide. It really can't, y'all. If we want our democracy in a republic to abide, these shenanigans cannot keep on going on. It's not something that we can keep on paying for because, like I said, no one wants to pay more taxpayer money for this kind of shenanigans. I know
Secretary Hegseth, tomorrow is 2 months since the war has begun. You've testified that it was $25 billion in cost in terms of the munitions we used and what we paid for it. But when you add to that the damage that was done to our bases and today's dollars for buying replacement munitions and replacement aircrafts, what has the total cost been over the last 60 days?
That number right now reflects the total cost that we're seeing.
Including buying in today's dollars the new weapons and replacements, and including the damage there? That's your testimony?
If there's
under oath?
adjustments to that, I would defer to the comptroller on that.
And how much are you seeing in terms of, are you asking in terms of supplemental funding just for the Iran mission from this committee?
If and when a supplemental is submitted,
Yeah, how much?
the majority of it would not be for
What would be the
Fury, it would be
ballpark for Iran?
munitions related to the entirety
Just
of
a
what we
number,
want to
sir.
get done.
A number, what would you submit? What are
It
you
would be
requesting?
on Iran, it would be less than 25 billion, but there's a lot more we would ask for beyond
So
just Iran.
you're saying it's
considering-
25 billion. Okay, I would just, if you
Okay.
come back, you want to revise those.
25 billion more this year before 1.5 trillion next year. Yeah.
Those numbers, because all the experts are disagreeing with you when it comes to today's dollars and damage, but you can revise it. How much did it cost American taxpayers in terms of the strike to the Iranian school where kids were killed? Do you have that number in terms of the missiles we used?
As I've said, that unfortunate situation remains under investigation.
You don't know how much it
15-6
costs the
investigation, but I
taxpayer?
wouldn't tie a cost to anything.
It's a reasonable question, no, sir? I mean, our taxpayer money was going there. Do you know how much it will cost Americans in terms of their increased cost in gas and food over the next year because of the Iran war?
I would simply ask you what the cost is of an Iranian nuclear bomb.
I'm going to give you that
I would
opportunity.
simply ask you what
yeah,
you're
but
playing gotcha
sir,
questions
sir,
about
no, it's
domestic
not.
things. I'm not.
You're saying it's a gotcha question to ask what it's going to be in terms of the increased
Why
cost
won't
of
you
gas
answer what
and
it costs to prevent Iran from getting a nuclear
food? I
bomb?
give you that, sir. But let me.
What
you
would
can
it
just
cost?
ask my-
What would you pay to ensure Iran doesn't
but
get a nuclear
can you-
bomb?
Do you?
What would
Sir,
you pay?
I reclaim my time. Do you not know? You had no one do the analysis of what the increased cost of gas and food on the American people are going to be?
What is the cost
Let
of
me- let
Iran
me give you
holding
the
that
number.
straight at
Let me
issue
give
with
you the
nuclear
number.
weapons?
It's $631 billion, which means it's an increase of $5,000 a year for American households. Now, let me give you this point. You're saying that your operation is preventing a nuclear Iran. Will you acknowledge that there is an economic cost to the American people for doing what you believe is necessary to make Iran denuclear? Will you acknowledge the economic cost?
We have an incredible economic team that's managing this better than
Yeah, but
what the previous
But to
administration did to our
acknowledge that-
economy,
to acknowledge
what the
there's a
previous
cost.
administration
You,
did
you
with
don't
inflation,
even know what the, you know
what
what's
the previous
upsetting. I reclaim
administration
my
did with
time. You know,
COVID,
Secretary,
and you're going to
Secretary,
lecture this
I reclaim
administration
my
about
time,
the
sir.
economy?
You know what is upsetting to me?
Incredible.
You didn't even do the analysis on how much it's costing the American people. It's one thing if you said, okay, it costs the American people $5,000, but we think it's worth it. That's what we've done in World War II and other wars. Here's what it costs. You got to pay for it. You don't even know what the average American is paying. You don't know what we paid in terms of the missiles that hit the Iranian school. You don't know what we're paying in terms of gas. You don't know what we're paying in terms of food. Your 25 billion number is totally off. It's the incompetence. It's the incompetence. Let me ask you this. Certainly, maybe here we'll find agreement. There was still 440 pounds of low enriched uranium, correct, when President Obama, after the JCPOA? Is that accurate?
The amounts and types are classified.
Okay. Will you acknowledge that there were 970 pounds of uranium enriched after Trump tore up the JCPOA?
The JCPOA was a terrible deal that allowed Iran a path to
I
a
know
nuclear bomb.
You deal with vague platitudes.
So the JCPOA actually was a great deterrent against Iran having this weapon. We had international inspectors able to go into Iran, inspect whenever they wanted, wherever they wanted. We were ensuring that they could only produce a fraction of the amount of nuclear materials necessary for simply building energy production with nuclear. We were making sure that they didn't have nearly enough to build a bomb. But as soon as Trump and his first administration tore up the JCPOA, then Iran went back to full-scale production again of making enough materials to build a bomb. Under the JCPOA, which President Obama negotiated, we had worldwide eyes on Iran's nuclear capabilities. We had complete deterrent action. But hey, because it was done by a black man that couldn't abide with 45 and 47.
I'm asking you about numbers. Like, you don't know what gas costs, you don't know what food costs, you don't know what the operation costs. You know, I get sound bites, but how about numbers? Do you know how much the enriched uranium was after you ripped up the JCPOA? Trump did.
I'll give you a number. I know that, as was stated by early on, the price of gas is twice as expensive in California, your home state, as anywhere else in the country because of the horrible policies your state pursued.
You know what? It used to be that type of stuff worked, and then you started to lose the people that you campaigned you wanted to be for, because you said you wouldn't get us into bad wars. You said,
again, back to what I said at the very beginning, they campaigned, they convinced people I love dearly that they would not get us into a war. People I love dearly said they voted for this administration while holding their nose so that we wouldn't get into a war in the Middle East or a nuclear war. Yet here we are with a regime that's putting on the brink of World War III.
you would bring down the prices. You know what I'm sad for? I'm sad for all the people who voted for Trump. I'm sad for them because you betrayed them. You betrayed a lot of that MAGA base. And you know who knows that? J.D. Vance knows that.
Yeah. So it's really ignore. Seriously hard to ignore the fact that this regime betrayed people that really believe that whole message on, oh, we will not start any wars. We are not warmongers. So, yeah, that's where we are. Hey, so we got some folks on tonight. Sandra Barrett, F. Hegseth, F. Captain Bonespurs. Yeah, couldn't say it better. Really? Dare I say it? I don't know, but I couldn't say it better. So, again, all politics is local. So this all comes back to here in Hardin County, we've lost a loyal patriot. And the 13 lives have been lost so far in this war. We have lost folks whose command structure is based out of Fort Knox when the Iowa National Guard troops got hit. We are losing when every day our farmers can't afford the fertilizer they need during planting time, during the spring, when they can't fill up their diesel. We just got to keep coming back to it's about our local economy. So what do we do to get out of this? Again, got to put the pressure on our legislators. Make your 5 calls a day and get serious and get out to vote. We've got right now the chance to vote who will be on our ballot in November. So in May, you're going to go out, you're going to decide whether it's the Democratic ticket or the Republican ticket, who is best designed and committed to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, which are these principles that we have stood upon in Kentucky since, again, my kin came through that Cumberland Gap with Daniel Boone. And then we all, after coming through the gap, we stood up again for a nation built upon government of the people, by the people, and for the people. And we fought against the British just for that. So when we go to the ballot box, we've got to choose folks who will be for that before they're for guarding pedophiles from prosecution, before they are for making sure that the rich just get richer and they pass them off a couple bucks for being in office. Got to get serious. We got to do a little bit of check here. It's not about left versus right anymore. It's not about who's the best Democrat, who's the best Republican for the talking points. It's who's the best Democrat, who's the best Republican for the United States and life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness. Who is going to stand up for us and not just those billionaires? That's what it's about. And we know that we've got folks right now that we're speaking today, and they're obviously standing up for the billionaires. They're standing up for a billionaire in chief. All right, so let's listen to Representative Moulton just a little bit more.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Secretary, you and I agree that Iran is a national security threat to us and our allies. Now, earlier you called us feckless for questioning your war. Do you think Congress was smart or feckless when it failed to ask tough questions of the Bush administration and gave them a blank check for Iraq?
Well, if you're trying to compare this war to the Iraq
I'm just asking you,
war,
do you think
the
it was
president
smart or
was the first one
feckless?
to call a stupid war, then it's a false comparison.
Okay, well, probably a good idea to ask tough questions. So let me just ask you a few questions. Did you advise the president that we should attack Iran?
We were, first of all, in this position in the cabinet, we never talk about what we would advise the president to do or
Well,
not.
do you think the president or
I've been
you
in
deserve more?
I've been in every meeting.
I understand
with
that,
the chairman
Mr.
and
Secretary.
everybody else as those
Secretary,
critical
I'm asking
decisions
the
were
questions.
made, and he got every perspective possible when it came.
I'm
to
just
making
asking what your perspective is. Are you afraid to take ownership of this? Do you
Well,
think it was a good idea or not?
as I've consulted the president, do I think it's a good idea to confront a nuclear bomb
To start this
in the
war.
hands of the? Imagine what the world would look like right now if Iran had a nuclear weapon.
Okay, so let's
Just imagine.
which, by the way,
if
every
they
other,
had one,
every
which the
previous
Obama deal was going to allow them to
including
do,
the first Trump
if
administration,
they had one.
prevented them from having a nuclear weapon. So, listen, how is this war going? Do you think we're winning?
Militarily on the battlefield, it's been an astounding military success.
No, but are we winning the war?
Absolutely.
Okay, so do you call Iran closing the Strait of Hormuz winning?
Well, I would say the blockade that we hold that doesn't allow anything to come in or out of Iranian ports.
Okay,
is
so
always in our
we've blockaded
portfolio
their
to
blockade. So
use.
they blockaded us, and then we blockaded their blockade. That's like
So just want to remind everyone that Seth Moulton is a Marine combat veteran, actually been in the thick of combat, unlike Whiskey Pete Kegsbreath, Captain Pete. And he is much more experienced in the art of warfare and of leadership of warriors than Whiskey Pete ever has been.
saying, tag, you're it. Or, you know, if President Madison had said, well, the British just burned down Washington, but don't worry, we're going to burn it down as well. Chairman Cain, did the military have plans for the idea that Iran might blockade the strait?
Sure. Thanks for the question. I'll answer it this way. You know, in this job, I have to maintain trust with a variety of constituents. to
Okay, I'm
include
just
the president.
asking if the military
Yes,
had
sir. We,
plans.
as always, my point in this is, as I explain the role, my point in this is we always offer a full range of military options that are carefully considered with the associated risks with those options and the considerations therein.
So,
and we
Mr.
always
Secretary,
do
did
that.
you consider this risk?
Of course, this department has looked at all aspects of this risk. And
So then
because
why did you
this
send the
department looks,
minesweepers, the only minesweepers we had in the Gulf, to Singapore weeks before the war started?
we have lots of capabilities that you may or may not be.
So, again, I'm a veteran of two major wars. I was in the first Gulf War. I was in Operation Enduring Freedom. That's that 20-year war that we just ended not too long ago. In that first Gulf War, we would never have thought of sending our minesweepers to Singapore when we know that the Persian Gulf has been riddled with mines ever since Iran and Iraq went to war with each other. So this is just absolute chicanery and someone who is not qualified to do the job, pretending that bravado makes them qualified.
Be aware of at the classified level.
Okay,
To
and
deal
so,
with to deal with.
by the way, would the
mines, and
Trump
we're-
class battleships have helped with this?
You're talking about a
Minesweeping.
prospective future battleship, which we welcome in the fleet.
Okay, so you're supportive of the battleships.
Yes, sir.
Okay. How much has Iran profited from your administration lifting the sanctions on Iran when you started this war?
I can tell you, Iran is financially devastated right now. In
Okay, well,
conjunction with the
they've earned
Treasury
about
and
$14 billion.
Operation Economic Fury, they're at a point where between the blockade and what we've done to them militarily, remember, they don't have a navy. They can't.
Absolute, complete lie. And Hegseth, I don't know why his nose isn't growing longer and longer, because it's widely reported and widely known that lifting the blockade on Iran's oil has doubled their defense budget, highly increased their gross domestic product. This is just incredible that this guy would try to act otherwise.
Contest the blockade.
Okay.
Between what we've done to them
What kind of
militarily
a
and
navy can
financially,
they buy
they're at a
for
place
$14 billion?
where they have very few options.
How many Chinese missiles can they buy for $14 billion? Does that sound like winning?
They're not. We're ensuring, and they're not buying Chinese missiles.
Okay. You know, at the end of the day, this also has a cost to us. If let's say this war costs $100 billion, I mean, you've already said, give us more time. It's only been 2 months. It could go on for 20 years like Iraq and Afghanistan. Let's just say it costs $100 billion. What is that to the average American taxpayer? Do you have any idea?
Well, unlike foolish previous administrations, it won't go on.
No, I'm just asking.
For years and decades.
But let's just say
sitting in
it's
this
$100 billion.
position, it's hard to imagine how
you know
it was
that?
allowed those things to happen. You were a part
You know
of that
the
war.
answer to that?
So was I. I never.
I'm
knew
just
what the end
asking if
state
you know what
clearly
your
was.
war
Now I
costs
know
the
what the
average
end state
American
is.
taxpayer.
What is the cost of Iran having a nuclear weapon that they wield?
I'm
over
just
us?
asking if you know the cost of the average American
I'm asking
taxpayer.
you what
It's
the
about
cost would be of
$600.
that.
So for the American taxpayers out there, my constituents, some of the constituents you wanted to represent in Minnesota, I'm just wondering if they have an extra $600 lying around to pay for your war. I think that's just a question that we ought to ask. Now, quickly on.
I know I don't have another $600 lying around for this war. And that number is only going to go up and up and up.
March 13th, in a press conference, you said, we will give them no quarter, no mercy. In order for no quarter or no survivors is a war crime under the Geneva Conventions. You understand that's murder. Do you stand by that statement?
The Department of War fights to win, and we ensure that our warfighters have the rules of engagement necessary to be as effective
Okay, so
as
just to
humanly
be clear,
possible.
you
which
called
they are.
Democratic members of Congress to be tried for sedition for reminding our troops to follow the law. But when you tell them to commit a war crime, you stand by yourself.
For insinuating that the laws
Congratulations,
that we're
Mr.
giving them are
Gentleman's
unlawful.
time's
What a
expired. Chair
breakdown.
now recognize the gentleman from Tennessee, Dr. Desjardins.
Support journalism you trust. Support PBS News.
So, once again, what is it that is going to take for our country to realize this is not helping our life, our liberty, or our pursuit of happiness? We already know the happiness factor is being dampened when our farmers can't go out and buy what they need to plant the crops that will feed us. And that's a big deal here in Hardin County. We've already seen what the cost of their shutdowns cost our county. So we've got, again, just to be completely serious about what we're going to do and about what we're going to say when these folks do nothing but tear our country down and act like they're making it great while they tear it down. So now, if you didn't know, if you hadn't heard, Kid Rock, big patriot, he is being flown around in Army helicopters, even though he's never served a day of his life in the military. Whiskey Pete has made sure he gets to go fly on these helos. This is after some war aircraft, combatant aircraft, came over to Kid Rock's house, did a fly up and hover at his house for, his entertainment. And then Kid Rock posted it, and congressional authorities were like, what is going on? So Whiskey Pete said the pilots that did that and that flew without real authorization were exonerated and were A-OK. And then now they allowed Mr. Kid Rock to have a glory flight.
Now recognizes Mr. Whitesides from California for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairwoman. Secretary Kegsbreath, General Cain, Mr. Hurst, thank you for testifying today and for your service to the nation. Over the past few weeks, military and civilian leaders of many of the DoD components have testified about their FY27 posture. We appreciate their professionalism and their service to the country and the time that they've spent to testify before us. I want to start with Mr. Hurst. Mr. Hurst, you testified at the beginning of this that you said that the estimated cost of the war is about $25 billion. In March, you stated that the first week of the war cost $11 billion. So is it right to say that the following 7 weeks have cost about $14 million total, or $2 billion per week?
Yeah, the most intense phase of the conflict was obviously the beginning. That's when most munitions were used.
Okay.
And that's the basic expense from the war.
Right. So that you also said just now that the $25 billion includes the cost of the munitions deployed. Is that right? This question is for the CFO, sir.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. So I guess I'm confused then. It makes sense that if that's the cost, then the cost to refill those stocks would be no more than $25 billion. Am I right about that?
When we estimate cost of the conflict, we're using current replacement cost for these weapon systems.
Right. You're using current replacement costs. So it's frankly pretty surprising that the estimate for the supplemental would be $200 billion. You don't, if you'd like to explain that, you can.
So, this chicanery keeps on going on. And then they go on and ask him about Kid Rock's flyover and why it was allowed and who signed off on it. And it turns out that, of course, it was Whiskey Pete.
The Army Apache helicopter that flew over Kid Rock's property on March 28th. An investigation was launched by the 101st Combat Aviation Brigade Command Leadership, but before that review is completed on March 31st, you terminated it via social media post. Did you personally direct termination of that review?
I did.
Okay. Now, the president said they probably shouldn't have been doing it and that I'd take a look at it. So did you talk to the president before terminating that review?
Well, I don't relay what I talk about with
Okay, I think unfortunately that means that you did talk to him, which in turn means that you've just confirmed that the president himself overruled the leadership of the 101st Airborne. Mr. Secretary, you yourself have affirmed repeatedly the need for higher standards and higher accountability at every level of your agency. Commanders rely on established processes to uphold these standards. How does canceling a command-initiated review by the 101st Airborne leadership support a culture of accountability? Actually, I think I'll ask that of the chairman.
Sir, back to my earlier comments about the importance in my role of staying in the middle. What you're alluding to is, in my assessment, with deep respect for your ask, is a partisan question, and I think it would be inappropriate for me to answer that.
Mr.
Not at all partisan. Why the F, during the middle of a war, would we be spending all that much money for the 101st to fly from Fort Campbell all the way down to Nashville and hover, burning fuel that's costing Americans incredible amounts of money right now? And yet, just to let Kid Rock act like he's the most patriotic man in the universe. Why was that allowed to happen? Why was that fuel being wasted and those helicopters' time being spent on a glory run for an overrated, over-the-hill musician? And the fact that these guys won't give us a clear answer and act like it's a partisan question should have us all pulling our hair out.
Sir, I actually don't think it is. I think it is actually a very fundamental principle of accountability in our department, and I think it was the wrong decision. I'm going to close by just saying one thing. Mr. Secretary, you started this hearing by politicizing it, and I want to make one point. Poll after poll shows that the American public does not support this war, and support is dropping every day. We are all representing our constituents, which is our constitutional duty. And to state that we are politicizing it is an affront to Congress and every member in this House, and I yield back.
You are politicizing it, Congressman.
The gentleman's time has expired. The chair now.
So that smirking, smug face of Whiskey Pete, how long are we going to abide it? That's what I'd like to know. Hey, Tom, welcome. Tom says that placard in front of him is in error. It reads, Honorable Hegseth. He has no honor. Absolutely no honor. He should not be in this position. It is only a matter of time, hopefully, before he is truly called before Congress for a real reckoning. This was only a slight reckoning. This was done while discussing the $1.5 trillion that the Pentagon is demanding vis-a-vis the president and the administration for next year. So this is not the actual reckoning that Hegseth should be going through. But, all right, y'all, this is an extremely important day in history. This is the day that we actually got a reckoning for one of the world's worst dictators in history, one that brought the whole world to war. This is the guy that Mr. Hitler saw as his person to look up to and model himself after. It is 81 years ago today that Benito Mussolini was executed. So, why do I bring that up? Well, let's just look. We know that our current president loves to quote Benito Mussolini and loves to model his actions in the White House alongside those of Mussolini. So it was Mussolini who aimed to restore Italy to the glory of the Roman Empire and said he was going to make Italy great again. I'm sure that doesn't sound familiar. And in order to make Italy great again, he was going to give and build a strong, disciplined state, nationalist state. So his regime relied on propaganda and intimidation. and they tried to be an expansionist country. He became an authoritarian to the hilt and very militaristic. So, it's very interesting to me that we've got a president who said he wasn't for war in our country, but now is becoming one of the most militaristic we've had in quite some time. Another one of the goals of making Italy great again was restoring Rome, right? He loved to reference the Roman Empire, the Caesars. So Mussolini was just infatuated with them. So what was he intent on doing and just crazy about doing? Building monuments, just like those elaborate ones along the Grand Boulevard of the old Roman Imperial Forum. And he did this because he wanted to emphasize Italy's past and future glory. Of course, his name and his picture were all over everything and everywhere at the time. Sounds interesting. And then we have that Cult of Personality. It's a great song from, was it the 80s or 90s? Yeah. They list, if you remember the lyrics, Benito Mussolini. He saw himself as that new Roman Caesar or emperor. He was strong. He was always right. And he was very disciplined according to himself. Right? And he wanted everyone else to be obedient to Il Duce, as he called himself. Well, this nationalist propaganda that he was always spouting on and on and on and on about, he says he was going to restore order from chaos. Does this sound familiar? Sounds familiar to me. And he always blamed the problems on outside forces and factors. Also sounds familiar. Now, the crazy thing is, he said he was either going to take the government by them handing it over to him, or he's going to seize it by force. Interesting. He also said that he had many enemies, but much honor. That was highlighting his stance on nationalism. Sounds very, very familiar. These folks that we're looking at, Whiskey Pete, even General Cain, they see everything as being anyone who is not for them as being their enemy. It's partisan question that you're asking. No, that wasn't a partisan question. The cost of the war, the cost of flying the helicopter from the 101st in Fort Campbell, Kentucky, all the way to Nashville and to hover over Kid Rock and to give Kid Rock a joyride even on the helo, it turns out. The cost of that, that's not a partisan question to ask. What was the cost? And why are we doing it when we're at war? What would be a better use of that flight time? And the fact that they won't answer it, couldn't answer it, and want to be surly about it, yeah, that just tells us everything we need to know. So don't forget, it was on April 28th, 1945, that Benito Mussolini was finally taken out. And hey, it was, far too long that the Italians had to suffer under his rule. And some of them today would love to see him come in there again, but most of them realize, they don't want to go back to that. And yet here we have a leader in our country who is modeling himself off of Il Duce and the Fuhrer. We've got to say enough's enough. We don't need that. My ancestors, my grandparents, aunts and uncles, they fought against this audacious authoritarianism, and we've got to do the same. All right, y'all. It's been a long day. I hope that you guys had a little, something to think about. Let's see what Tom's saying. Tom says, none of those who vote to confirm him have any honor either. Right. Those who voted to confirm Whiskey Pete had any honor. They sure didn't. All right, y'all. So it's been quite a time. It's time for us to remember where we're going to get through this together is by loving our neighbor as ourselves, recognizing, hey, I am my brother's keeper. I am my sister's keeper. And if I recognize that and I act that way, then I'm not going to be divided against my neighbor. And as Kentucky's motto says, united we stand, divided we fall. So y'all, bless your corazon this evening. And let's remember those deployed overseas tonight, tomorrow, and make sure that they are brought home soon with honor and dignity before we get further out of hand with Whiskey Pete and crazy General Cain, who has none of the balls to stand up and shut down this nonsense. Y'all, hopefully you had a great hump day. I know I did. And I'm hoping to have a great rest of the week, like y'all should too.